Hey everybody, Marcus Crawford here with the Idaho Quadcopter channel. Hey, today we have a little minor development. I've got the Hubsan Zino. This is the original Hubsan Zino. This is the one that came out in 2018, and I got mine in December of 2018, and it's turned out to be kind of a favorite drone of mine. Very reliable, very robust. It's been a really fun little drone. So recently they just came out, well, it was mid-May, they came out with another firmware update, which says something about Hubsan, the fact that they are still updating this drone. Like I said, this drone came out in 2018 and they're still doing firmware updates. So I printed off the notes here. So they upgraded the flight control to version 1.2.08. Now the last version that I saw released was 1.2.05, so clearly they've been doing some work in the lab, which is good. They also, in that firmware package, had new gimbal firmware. Well, it's not new, but version 3.0.2.8. Now, I had loaded that version previously and it didn't work out for me. It gave me a tilted horizon, so I contacted Hubsan and they told me to roll back to 3.0.2.2, and I did, and I haven't had a problem since. So I reloaded that gimbal firmware this time after loading the flight control version 1.2.08, and again that is up from 0.05 is what I had previously. And of course the camera firmware is 0.3.6, and that's the one that works the best. They came out with a 3.8 at one point that was just a disaster, so Hubsan even rolled that back for everybody and recommended that older version of the firmware. So what does it say? So I'm looking at their notes, and what they say is it improved the battery detection and display, and then they're saying that it optimized flight performance experience. Now that is a very, very broad statement, and how do we know what that means? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's get this thing up in the air and let's see if we notice anything new or different about it. Oh, they have done, and I think I reported on this before, they did very recently do an update to the app. Not the X-Hubsan 2 app, which is for the Zino 2, but the original X-Hubsan app that also gives this bird the drone status page that comes up when you fire it up, which is really cool. Tells you whether you need any calibrations, compass calibration, etc. Now, after I did the firmware upgrade, I did of course recalibrate everything, but I will also do out here in the field another compass calibration before I take off. Anyway, let's quit messing around, let's get it in the air. Okay, the drone is giving me what they call the device status list, and that shows the firmware package that I have in there. It says we're connected, says aircraft system status normal, compass is normal, gyroscope is normal, gimbal is normal, and it shows the battery voltage there. Now, even though it's not asking for a compass calibration, I'm going to do one here real quick. Okay, we got a successful calibration there, so let's take a look here. I do not see, we've got 12 satellites. I don't see any reason why we can't get in the air. Let's switch over to video mode. Let's check our video settings real quick. And yeah, 4K 30 frames per second, white balance, sunny day, color ordinary, that's perfect. I'm going to turn on grid lines. I previously had grid lines on, and so evidently when we reset it, it turned off grid lines. So anyway, we got them back on now. Okay, let's start recording and let's get this thing in the air. So recording has started, and we will do an automatic takeoff. I'm going to get out of the way. Okay, we are going to hit takeoff on the controller right here. So the drone went up, really no Hubsan drop at all. It was very stable. Yeah, I mean, it took right off there and it's holding its position well. We don't have a lot of wind today, which is good. So let's flip it around here and let's bring it in and we'll get a good look at it. I'm going to drop some altitude. We'll see if we can get it to camera level here. Now this guy, I won't bring him too close, but it's moving forward here a little bit. Let's back it off just a tad. Let's do a quick yaw around. And the drone is rising up out of camera range on that yaw. So I let off the yaw, and here it comes back into frame. Okay, so we'll do that over again. Let's drop it down a little bit. And notice how it wants to go back where it was before. So let's back it off. I'm going to try and go to my left. And this is typical of the Zino. It moves around a little bit. So that's why you keep it at a distance. It wants to go where it wants to go. So let's do that yaw over again so you can see that. And there again, it's rising as it yaws. Not too bad though. Okay, so it's moving around. This is typical Hubsan, but you know, you have to understand this drone, all it has is a barometer and GPS. It does not have any kind of downward facing sensors. So this has always been a little bit of a challenge for me with this drone to get a good steady manual droning because it's really easy to cross couple on this controller, but we're going to try it. Reverse and up now. Well, that one's going pretty good. Stopped raising in altitude. We're going full speed in reverse, about 8 meters per second. So this drone will it'll haul the mail pretty good. So yeah, let's just go straight back forward here, and you know, let's see. Let me pick up the gimbal and get that rule of thirds. And as usual, I don't know, I see a very, very tiny little tilt, and now it's corrected. This drone has always had a nice flat horizon, and I really appreciate that. So full stick forward, so full forward on the right stick, and we should get up to roughly 8 meters per second. Yeah, so we're a little bit over. And boy, it doesn't take it any time. Here she comes. Right, almost directly over the top of me right now. So 8 meters per second, that's roughly, I think, about 20 miles an hour, something like that. Maybe 21. Let's see how I'm turned around now. I need to face the drone. I always forget. I end up facing the opposite way, so let's do a little yaw here. And let's run over to this opposite corner. So far so good. I'm pleased with what I see. Drone is operating great. We're down to about 70% battery. And we've been flying for 4 minutes. Yeah, it's giving me an aircraft disconnected. We got it back, and I was facing the aircraft that time. But we got some trees between me and the drone, so I think that's it. And you know, we're 55 meters high, so I think that's the issue there. And you see a little bit of breakup on FPV there. Okay, we're gonna go full stick forward, and we'll get a good solid signal here as it comes forward. I've successfully flown this drone out a full kilometer before, typically it has a pretty good connection. So there goes the drone. It is about even with me right now. You know, it's not the fastest drone in the world, but it also is, it's not slow either. It's got enough, I've found, typically enough speed and power for most things that you're going to do. So I want to center it on the Boise front here so you can take a look at the video quality. That's one of the things that this drone does really well, is it punches above its weight in video quality. It shoots in 4K 30 frames per second, and I'm sure the sensor on the camera is probably from a cell phone that's about 4 or 5 years old, but I'm telling you, they've tuned it. It works surprisingly well. Okay, so let's see if we can mess around and try some stuff out here. So I'm going to do a pretty quick yaw here, so you can kind of see the gimbal performance on a yaw. And of course, part of this you'll see a little blurring, and of course that's going to be that sensor on the camera. There's my favorite cell phone tower. I think what we should do is I think we should go over the top of that cell phone tower and do one of our signature orbits around that. And you can see how well this drone operates. It's got some pretty good tricks with regard to orbit. In my experience, it's very accurate. So let's bring it over the top of the tower here. I will lower the camera as we go. We'll shoot straight down because we want to be straight over the top of it. Because the way we're going to set that point of interest is having the drone will circle right over the top of its point of interest. That's pretty close. We might be able to get a little closer than that. Yeah, I keep overcorrecting there, but that's pretty good. So okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the camera back up now, and I've got the gimbal set fairly calm because yeah, there's nothing worse than a gimbal movement that's too quick. So we're going to go into orbit mode here and click I got it, and then rather than setting the transmitter as the point of interest, we're going to set the aircraft's current position as POI. Next step, we need to back off now altitude wise, or excuse me, radius wise, and we can back out to whatever radius we wish. We're far enough now because you saw that number go into green, so we're about 31 meters. I'm going to click execute immediately, and we can set the speed here. I'm going to hide this, and then but we need to drop the gimbal back to that center so you can see where that center is at. So there we've got the gimbal looking down at the head of that tower, and so, you know, you'll see a little bit of variation there, and that's probably the, you know, my initial setup. If you're just a little bit off, obviously it's not going to be exactly in the center, but as it comes around, I suspect we'll see it come back. And yeah, I'm watching the drone, and it's just executing a perfect circle. And you know, I always get back to the fact that this drone, boy, if you watch it, you can get it on sale often for 250 bucks. It's available commonly for about 300 bucks. Even if you pay full price for it off the Hubsan website, it's $369. I just think it, even though it's almost, well, it's a good year and a half old now, which is old for a drone, I just think it still represents a great value, and I applaud Hubsan for continuing to refine it. So we're down to 47% battery, and look, we're kind of more centered on it now, so that'll show you the difference in where I placed it. So yeah, let's stop that orbit. I think we've proven our point there, and let's bring the drone back to us. So I'm gonna reverse and do a turn here. Pick up that gimbal, and you can see me standing under the tree there. So the other thing, oh yeah, it's telling me 40% battery, and we've been in the air, we've been filming for almost 11 minutes. So that's pretty typical for my experience on this drone. So we're bringing it back and lowering altitude. Let me move it over towards us here. Lower some more altitude. So battery wise, I mean, I think it's doing a great job of telling us, that's one of the things that they said they worked on is the battery level, and that seems to be pretty linear and working well. So that's a good improvement. So I was going to do some tracking here, but we've got some folks here that are playing frisbee golf. The problem, I like tracking on this drone, but it does not have obstacle avoidance. So you have to be careful when you're tracking, because the drone can run right into a tree or a building or something if you're not careful. But we should be able to do it here. Let's bring it down, let's give it a shot. So let's see if it can get me under the shade of this tree. This will be a good test. I'm going to center it on me, and then we're going to go back into that, and it's giving me a low battery warning, and we're going to go active track, which is where it needs to see me optically, and it does have me. So we're going to click go. And it's got me. So it's tracking perfectly. Let's kick a little altitude up here. And it's still got me. So I have confidence at the altitude that we're at here that it won't run into anything. So one of the things that we'll do, let's let it track here for a little bit.
Low battery warning.
Yeah, it's going into return to home.
Return to home.
So let's see if it'll do a precision landing. So it should ascend to altitude. Yes, and it is. And I'll turn off recording. Yeah, it's down to 19% battery. Yeah, I'm going to turn off recording right now, so we'll just get the screen recording here. And then the drone, and it may not do it on low battery. It may just try and land. I'm not sure. But hopefully we'll get a shot at a precision landing. Okay, it's coming down. Let's see if it'll lower the camera. 14% battery. Yeah, so it just gave me a dialog box that says that it won't try to attempt a precision landing. But look at how close it is. So it did take it a second to shut down there, and I'm just looking at the telemetry. It says it's still 1.5 meters, so 4 or 5 feet off the ground, but we're down to 14% battery. But I'd say that's a pretty darn good landing, even though it did not execute a precision landing because of low battery. So let me take a look here. Let me shut it down. Okay, so let's go into the flight log and see if we can see how long we were up there for. So yeah, we got about not quite 15 minutes out of that battery. And what were we down to there? Like 15% or 14% or something like that. I'm going to tell you, in my experience, that's pretty typical for this drone. In fact, you can look at those other numbers. I see one here that says 19 minutes. That one's more than I usually get. So, you know, battery-wise, don't expect this drone to. You're not going to get a 20 or 25 minute flight out with a battery on this guy. So understand that. But you know, a lot of things, 15 minutes is plenty. And you know, the other thing that I'll add is most of that flight was at full throttle. So we were burning up battery pretty good. Okay, the original Hubsan Zino. Like I said, I think a drone that doesn't get enough respect for the value that it represents and the price range, etc., and just how well it flies and what it brings to the table. So we upgraded to flight control 1.2.08 on the firmware, and you know, they said that was supposed to improve, let me get their exact words again, improve the battery detection and display. That seemed to work pretty good. It seemed to be very linear. I remember on some earlier versions of firmware, the battery would drop a bunch initially and then it would come down more slowly. So clearly they have improved the way it reads the battery. Seemed to be a lot more linear. It says an optimized flight performance experience. You know, they, I think, had that down a long time ago. This guy flies really well. For what it is. Now, you don't expect it to fly like a drone that has, you know, all kinds of obstacle avoidance sensors and time of flight sensors and downward facing sensors of all kinds. It doesn't have any. It's just blank under there. So all it has is a barometer and GPS. But for what it does really well. You saw the takeoff, it was pretty steady. Then you saw it when I brought it in, it kind of floated around a little bit. So typical of this drone. But you know, how often are you flying a drone in that close proximity? It isn't often. Most of the time you're up in the air. So if you're looking for a drone that, you know, you're trying to get in close to things, this probably isn't the one for you. But it has a lot of other virtues. So we took it and flew it around a little bit, so you got to take a look at the video quality, and then it did a perfect circle around the cell phone tower out there. We did some tracking, tracked it, just tracked me perfectly. The tracking on this thing is just really good, and what I think is really particularly important is we started the tracking while I was standing here in the shade next to the camera, and it got me perfectly, and it held me perfectly as I walked out. I raised altitude while I was tracking, didn't lose me. Walked out into the middle of the field out there, it held me the whole time till it went into low battery return to home, which is what you want it to do. Now, one of my intentions was to try precision landing. I've got a new, little bit bigger landing pad, and I was going to give it a better chance at precision landing, but the battery was low enough that it would not do a precision landing. Totally understand that. That takes power. They programmed it that way for a reason. When it's in low power mode, it wants to get on the ground. But even at that, it was maybe 1.5 feet off the pad, if that. So I thought that was pretty darn good. So I just want to, you know, again, recommend this drone as a, you know, if you're just starting in the hobby, or even if you've been doing it for a while, this is still just a fun drone. But particularly if you want to get your foot in the door with GPS camera drones, the original Hubsan Zino is a great way to do it at a reasonable price, and it takes some really good video. You will have already seen that. This is Marcus Crawford with the Idaho Quadcopter channel out. And if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. Most of all, I really appreciate you taking the time to look at this video. And, you know, we will absolutely see you on the next one. I got some more flights planned with the Mavic Mini and, of course, the Mavic Air 2. We might take this guy's big brother, the Hubsan 2, out, and, of course, the FIMI X8 SE. I've got the 2018 version with the 2020 version on the way. And that we'll get that 2018 version out again. That's another favorite drone. So anyway, we'll see you guys later.